So this evening, we're talking about how to help those who are hurting. And I've actually chosen to think about those who are hurting because they've been abused, because this is often some of the hardest things that we have to deal with. And the skills that you learn from helping people who have experienced abuse will be able to help you help other people as well. So I hope that's okay. And if that troubles you and you'd rather not hear about abuse for whatever reason, then if you want to leave now, that's absolutely fine. Do take care of yourself. But we'll be looking at how we can help you, perhaps, and those around you who may be hurting. Some ideas will help you if you're the one who's suffering. So the focus will be really connected with abuse. But as I say, other people can be helped by the tools that you will learn. And I encourage you to keep learning and reading, because there's a lot of material out there now, how to help yourself and others who are hurting. And the more that all of us know how to do this, then the more healing and help and comfort we can bring into the world. So there's many, many different kinds of abuse. And I think the longer I have been working with abuse, the more things have been added to the list to clarify what is abuse and to think about the different forms of abuse. So obviously there's physical abuse, violence, hitting, physically hurting another person in many different ways. Then there's sexual abuse, being forced to do sexual activities against your choice and will, or hurting people during sex. Emotional, belittling, shaming, criticizing, false accusations, blaming, gaslighting. Then there's controlling, pressuring people to do what they don't want to do, not letting them say no, not giving them consent to choose what they want to do in their lives. Financial is limiting finances, taking money away from people, not providing enough resources for survival to buy food for the children, for example, even though there is actually plenty of money. Someone limits the resources that another person has. Then there's relational abuse, limiting contact with other people, telling them they can't contact their friends, they mustn't go out, having your phone watched for every message from anybody else, and stopping you making contact socially. Then there's elder abuse, when elderly people are mistreated because they are vulnerable, they're maybe housebound, maybe sick, maybe have disabilities, so they can't get around and move away when they're being abused. Then there's spiritual abuse, emotional, physical, sexual, relational, coercive, and financial abuse, all the different kinds of abuses that are happening within a spiritual context, with an extra pressure of, if you don't do what I tell you, then this is what's going to happen to you. You need to behave, you need to do this to be right, to be accepted, to be loved by God and me. And spiritual abuse is really toxic, because all of the abuses are really dreadful for the person and their sense of well-being and sense of self-worth and identity. And spiritual abuse, and all of these abuses too, can really distort a person's picture of God. And that's, for me, one of the saddest things we can do, is to behave towards others in such a way that their picture of a loving God is damaged and distorted, or even destroyed. So sadly, these are things that do happen. I can't tell you how many kinds of abuse I have heard about just in the last month. And so I know it's happening all around us, and I wish that we could do more to help people be kinder to one another, to stop abusing them, and to protect those who are vulnerable. And it's such a huge amount of abuse happening at the moment, because people are hurting, and hurt people, and it's a very confused world in which we live. There's a very good website called restoreduk.org, or sometimes Restored Relationships. If you Google Restored Relationships, you will end up at this website, which is a Christian website focusing on abuse happening within Christian homes and churches, with lots of really good information. And it's really important for us to be aware of the signs of abuse, or the signs that someone is struggling with life. And because when we know what they are, we can spot when someone is changing, and see that they could be more vulnerable. Maybe they become more withdrawn. You notice that they're being isolated from family and friends. Before, they used to meet with their friends and family quite regularly, but now you notice that's not happening anymore. They're not making contact with family and friends. They may come to church and late and leave early, and not mingle with people for various reasons. They might have bruises, burns, and bite marks where on their body, but often they will cover it up. So maybe they will have long sleeves in the summer to hide their bruises and burns or whatever has been happening to them. Or they may not come to church because they have a black eye one week and they don't feel they can come. So if you see that people are hurt and they'll say, oh, I walked into a door, or they're regularly bumping themselves and they just say, I'm clumsy, this might be a sign that there's something else going on. They may be having their finances controlled, and you can see they haven't really got enough money to buy food or to get the bus or to come to church or to pay their bills. You might see that they're no longer allowed to leave the house, or they're stopped from going to college or work. You might, they might change how they communicate with you through social media because they're being monitored, and they don't feel free to tell you honestly what's happening in their lives. Someone else is reading their text, emails, or letters. They might be being repeatedly belittled. If you're around them with someone else, or their abuser, you might hear that they're being shamed, put down, told they're worthless, being bullied by the words. And so listen out for words that people around you are being belittled and put down. You probably won't see this, but being pressured into sex is also an abuse, and being told that abuse is your fault or that you're overreacting is called gaslighting. Like when someone tells you something that doesn't fit with your reality and they insist that there is reality, and it starts to make you feel really confused, then that's called gaslighting. So there's all different sorts of abuse that you might recognize in other people or for yourself. And you might have thought, well, that's fairly normal. That's okay. Maybe this is what marriage is like, or maybe the person's having a bad time. But it's important for each one of us to know what the signs of abuse are, so we can recognize when it's happening to us. And if people tell us about these things, we can help them to see that this is what might be happening to them as well. So abuse is painful, it's so painful. It's an invasion of another person's internal world. It's like someone has walked into your home and smashed up the things that you love and taken them and left a huge mess. Imagine if that happened in your house, and abuse is like that happens in your life, inside you, in your heart and your mind. And there's been a few times in my life when I've experienced someone gaslighting me. Fortunately, I'm aware when they do that because I know about it. But even though I know, I feel like someone's put their hands into my brain and twisted it, and put their hands into my heart and just wrung it out, and put their hands into my gut and just pulled everything to pieces. And that's when I know what's happening. And that's when I'm, my world is generally safe and secure, but that's what it feels like. And then I know this, okay, that wasn't right. That wasn't good. This is something that is abusive. And this is, in that case, gaslighting. So I'm going to tell myself that I believe in my own reality, not the other person's reality. I am okay. They're the ones who have a problem. I'll make sure I do some nice things in the evening to make me feel better, and talk to probably my husband about it and have a bit of a rant so I get it out of my system before I go to bed, because it's really important to clear your head and feel right about yourself before you sleep on it, because if you sleep with all those ideas going on inside you, it can make it more worse and make it harder for you, lead to sort of sadness and anxiety. So abuse is also selfish and violent, like personal vandalism. And people that I've met who've experienced abuse or deep traumas can leave long-term damage in their life. Often it can lead to some cases of mental health issues affecting their ability to work, to earn money, to run their lives in a normal way. We know that people who've been abused are more likely to turn to drugs and alcohol to numb the pain. And there's even a higher incidence of people in prison who've experienced abuse in their lives. So it can be completely devastating. And it's completely opposite to God's compassion and care for each one of his children. We read that perfect love casts out fear. Fear and love can't coexist. And so perfect love casts out fear. It does not create or cause fear. So if someone you love is making you feel afraid, that's a sign that something isn't right, because perfect love won't make you feel afraid. So what are some of the effects of abuse? I mentioned we have some mental health issues, relational health. It may lead people to become isolated and damages their relationships, their trust in other people, their ability to be confident socially. It can have a severe effect on their spiritual health as it distorts their picture of God. Their physical health and well-being because of the worry and concern and the physical pain they may be experiencing. So all of these different things have these results underneath them. So we can see that it has this devastating effect. And that's why it's so important for us to notice, to be aware, to let people know, if it's safe to do so, that we notice that they're suffering and can we help. I have to be really wise about that to make sure that if you're asking someone, are you okay? You know, I can notice that you're changing. Make sure that you do it in a really safe place with nobody else around, because they might not feel safe to actually tell you what's really happening in their lives. They might say, oh, it's nothing. I just bumped into a door. I'm just tired this week or something like that. So how can we help? Well, one thing is to be aware that people around us may be being abused. They may have had traumas. They may be going through other things that are causing distress in their life. And so it's useful to look around you, look at the people you work with, you live around, you go to church with, and your family, and think, is everything okay with them? Just focus on them and think about what they've said to you recently. Think about the time you spent with them and just check in with yourself. Are they okay? Or is there something happening that maybe I just need to be aware of, look more carefully for, maybe ask some gentle questions and see. When we think that someone is going to tell us something painful, so if we ask, we might be afraid that, oh no, that then they'll tell us something and we won't be able to manage it. So when we think that someone's going to tell us something and we aren't going to be able to listen well or cope or have the right answer, our minds can go into some kind of panic, which doesn't help us to listen very well. Because when we start to panic and think, oh no, I'm not going to do this right, then it can activate the sort of fight or flight stress mechanism in our brain. And when that happens, we might want to run away or stop the person telling the story or tell our story to make it safe. It's harder to listen when this happens, because when we feel afraid, it stops us being so empathic and able to listen. Also, when we hear the story, it can make us really angry about the abuser, and that can sometimes stop us from being helpful to the victim as well. We might find ourselves experiencing all kinds of emotions that we're dealing with that can, so we focus on those and we're less able to help the other person. So it's important to be aware this might happen. It's quite normal for this to happen. Even as an experienced therapist, there's times when I start to wonder, oh, how is this going to be? But I soon manage to calm myself down because I'm used to it, and I have some skills to deal with it. So even though I might feel I'm about to be triggered, then I calm myself down, so I prepare myself to listen well. And before starting to talk, it can be useful to talk about how should we talk. We often don't have those conversations. So it might be that we say, that we realize it's time to talk about something, and someone wants to tell us something. And it's helpful to say, what would be the best way, most helpful way for you to talk to me? And what would be the most helpful way for me to listen to you? And I often do that. Sometimes I even tell my husband, I'm going to tell you this story and I want you to listen in this way. When I get to the end, I just want you to give me a big hug. I don't want you to fix me. I just want a big hug and to know that you're there and know that you care. So it's important to talk about how we're going to talk, where we're going to talk, how we can listen well to each other and respond, so that the person who is hurting can have a good experience in the conversation. They get what they want from it, and ask them, what are your hopes for the conversation? How can we talk together? What would you like me to do when you've finished? How would you like me to listen? So the more we know about how to help people, the easier it is to listen to them. The challenge is sometimes if we've experienced some kind of abuse or hurt ourselves, that you need to be aware of the effect this conversation might have on you. You might actually not be the best person for them to talk to, because you could get triggered and be overwhelmed, and you might not be in the best place for that. But if someone wants to come and talk about it and you realize that, I'm not sure I'm ready for this. It's okay to say, you know what, I've experienced some tough things in my life too, and I really want to help you, but I'm thinking that I might not be the best person for you to talk to right now. So let's see if there's someone else that we can find that can help us. And that's okay too. The Good Samaritan took the injured man to another person to have him looked after for a while, who could look after him better than he could. So be aware that you don't have to do this all on your own. You can help them find someone safe and trusted and helpful to talk to if you might not be able to manage it. Something that I found really useful to understand, and that's just becoming more into the general awareness now, is that talking about trauma, talking about abuse can actually be re-traumatizing for the person, because when they retell their story, they have all those feelings again, they enter into it, and that can be overwhelming for them and really difficult. So I often assure them you don't have to talk about it to feel better, because that's often what they've heard from all sorts of sources. You have to talk it through, you have to talk it out. So instead, I say we don't have to talk about it, because that can be troubling, but we can talk about what effect has this had on your life? How has it changed your life that you've had this experience? And that can feel safer. And maybe they want to express themselves in poetry or art or sculpture, or find a song that kind of sums up how they're feeling, or even a psalm. So it doesn't always have to be about talking. You can say, wonder how you'd like to express that, and give them some options. So asking about the effect on their life. How has it changed their life? How is it limiting their life? How is it changing how they see themselves, how they work, how they understand God? Their happiness, their emotions. So talking about those things can feel safer and help them to actually realize the big effect that it has had on their life. And that can sometimes help them to get some help. So help them think about how the experience has changed them, and what their hopes are, what they would like to have instead, and how you can help them towards the hopes they have in their life. So one of the things I do as a family therapist, I don't say to people, tell me all your problems, because when they do, they just feel worse and worse. So I say, tell me about your hopes. What do you hope from coming to see me? What are your long-term hopes for coming for help? And what can we do in the next hour? What are your hopes that we can achieve in the next hour? And that's useful for you too, because then the person will come up with a bite-sized chunk and you think, oh yeah, okay. I'm not sure how to manage the big problem, but this little bit that you want to do in the next hour, maybe we can do that. But that's small, we can try it. And so asking them what their hopes are long-term, and also hopes for the next hour, can help them to clarify what's most important to them and listen to them. The most helpful messages that we can give people when they tell us their story is, I believe you. One of the biggest fears people who have been abused is that others won't believe them. And that's often why they don't share, because sometimes the person who's abused them or hurt them, everyone else thinks they're a great person, and they think no one's going to believe me if I tell them what they're really like. And when others don't believe them, it is like a double abuse. It's really hard for them to tell someone what's happening. And when someone doesn't believe them, then that is just devastating. So it's often people who've been hurt and abused are afraid that they will experience further hurt and shame and rejection and blame, because perhaps they've been told, well, no one's going to love you now, and you're no good, and no one wants to be your friend. And so their experience and their thoughts about having a relationship or a friend to talk to might have been distorted by the person that is hurting them. It's really very rare for people to make false allegations about abuse and rape. It does happen, but it is extremely rare. So in the Bible, Paul says, say only what helps, each word a gift. So just say what is going to help the other person, saying, I believe you, I've heard you, I care, I believe you, are some of the most important things. And I'm here. I don't know everything I can do to help you, but I want you to know that I'm here for you. And together we'll find out some things that might be useful for you. Another helpful message is, you are courageous. It's very important to affirm people's courage in speaking up about what has happened to them. Whether it's a trauma that they've experienced that they've just held inside themselves because they didn't know how to talk about it, or an abuse, or their sadness, their mental health issues, whatever they are, tell them you are courageous to speak up about what has happened to you and to tell me. And I feel really honored that you would share your story with me. Every time someone has shared their story with me, I feel in awe of what they have been through and the courage they have to hang in there through all the things that are happening to them. And it's just, for me, incredible to hear people's stories. And I learn more about life, myself, them, relationships, abuse. From listening to them, I am enriched. And I hope that what I experience from them, I can also use to help other people. So we need to let them know we won't judge them or shame them or blame them, that we will keep them safe and not hurt them the way other people have hurt them, or traumatize them if they've been traumatized. We want to be people who help them to feel safe and help them on their journey towards healing. Be devoted to one another in love and honor one another above yourselves. So when we say things like, you are courageous, I'm in awe of what you have been through and how you are surviving, it really helps them to hear a different kind of story about themselves when they see that we look up to them and we're not looking down on them. When we say words that build up and not words that tear down. Other helpful messages are, I will help to protect you. I will do what I can to help you feel safe. And you might not be a professional, you may be just a friend, but you can say, I'll do what I can to help you feel safe. I'm not an expert, but if you tell me what you need, I will try to be part of that or help you to find somewhere else that can help you with what you need the most. I'm always here for you, and perfect love casts out fear. So help them to feel safe with you, know that you're a safe person, live up to their trust, be confidential, and do whatever you do for them. Ask them first, what would you like? How can I help you with this? I could do this, or I could do this, and give them choices and help them to find their own way, because that also gives them back their dignity and their sense of agency, and it empowers them. So listening is really important, as we said earlier. So do your best to stay calm, because when we stay calm, we can listen better and more responsively. We can take some deep breaths. If you feel you're going to be triggered or that you are getting anxious about what you're hearing, I find it really useful to take some really big deep breaths and blow out slowly, like you're blowing bubbles. So a big, and then, and do that 3 times. And when I do that 3 times, I feel a lot calmer. It's God has put this into our lives as a natural way to calm us down when we experience stresses and challenges in life. So understand, when they listen, understand, affirm their courage, emphasize your loving concern. Remember that your warm, accepting, and focused listening is a really, really precious gift to the people who are hurting. So be safe, patient listeners. Prepare to listen well. Ask what their hopes are for talking with you, so you know what they want right now. Pray and breathe deeply so that you stay calm and not overwhelmed. Whenever I talk with anyone, any client, I'm praying quietly, silently. Please, God, send your Holy Spirit to help me understand what they need to be part of the healing, to be part of the process. I need that every single time. And then focus on the person speaking to you with your eyes, with your attention. And sometimes it helps to write down their story as they tell it on a big sheet of paper that they can see too. So they can see that you're listening, that you've got the key points. Sometimes if they're really traumatized, they forget where they are in their story. And if they can see what you've written down and see that, it reminds them what else they need to say, and you can add that. So sometimes I create a mind map of their story that they can look at And that's often quite helpful for them. They might take a photograph of it to take away, or they can take the whole sheet of paper away, because it can help them to clarify some of what's been happening in their life, or even look at it and go, wow, until I said all this, I didn't realize what I was going through. But now I can see it on paper. It helps me to take stock of what's going on and to feel encouraged to look for more help. And as we listen, try and be a channel of God's love as you listen and respond with loving kindness. So listen with your eyes as you look at them, with your ears, with your mind, with your heart, and with your whole body, and just imagine that God's presence is there in you, and you want to be a channel of his love as you listen and respond with loving kindness. So when we listen with our eyes, we show that our attention is focused on them. When I was learning to be a therapist, they said, when someone else is talking, give eye contact 100% of the time, if that's appropriate. And when you're talking, look away 50% of the time. So it's not an intense eyeballing gaze. But when we give eye contact when they're talking, it helps them to feel that we're really listening and that we're really focused on them and they're important. And listen with your ears, really listen to what they're saying. Don't just hear the words going through your mind, really listen to the things that they're saying. Think about what their emotions might be in the times, their thoughts, their questions, their concerns, their fears. Experience empathy for them by thinking about what is going on in their life as they're telling the story. And be curious, ask some warm, open-ended questions that encourage the person to talk more if they want to. When we ask a question that encourages them to say more, then they really feel like, wow, this person really cares. They're not just trying to shut down my story. They want me to tell more of it. They really are interested in me. So asking 2 or 3 really warm, open-ended questions that help them to express more, maybe positive questions like, what was really helping you in that time? What helped you to stay brave in that situation? Or was there anyone or anything that showed you God's love when you were in that time? And how did you find strength in the situations? And how did you make that good choice? So by asking those sorts of questions, you help them to see the strengths in themselves. It's kind of something called appreciative inquiry. So it's asking questions that appreciate the other person, that help them to see the best in themselves and to find this new identity. Remember that everyone responds differently to trauma. Some don't want to talk about it. Some will speak calmly. Others will be very distressed. Some will speak as if it's happening to someone else. They've kind of disassociated from the whole experience, and it's like it happened to someone else and not them. And remember that they don't have to talk. That talking about the effect of it is often more helpful than making them tell their story over and over again to different people. And each time going back into all of those experiences. We remember trauma through our whole body, and it's not just in our mind. It's not just a verbal memory. It's something that the whole body feels. So when we talk about it, the whole body can feel those things again as if they're back in that moment, and that can be really overwhelming. And sometimes when people have been really traumatized, they tell the story in a different way every time. Maybe it sounds inconsistent. Believe that it is consistent. Let the inconsistencies go, because the effect of trauma on their brain and their memory can sometimes muddle things up a bit. And so don't be too hung up on that this was the story this time and this was a story this time. They're just different aspects of their story. It's all their story, and treat it as that. And don't start to question whether it's valid or not because it's not consistent, because that's actually quite normal when people are struggling and hurt and distressed. They might also say things that they wouldn't normally say when they're distressed. So people use a word that they wouldn't normally use, or even tell you that they did something that they wouldn't normally do. Let it go. When we're struggling and abused and hurting, we do different things just to try and survive, and just blow that away. Let it go. Don't keep it confidential. Just accept it and move on, because we all have different ways of dealing with our traumas. I have to think about like Noah in the Bible and Lot, and both of them got completely drunk after they had their terrible experiences, their traumas. of watching, lots of people dying at once and a flood covering the earth and Sodom and Gomorrah. That was a lot for them in those days. And so they struggled with those things that they experienced in those times. And people will also struggle today at times, and just be gentle with their struggles, because it's a lot to manage sometimes. And people find the best ways they can for them in the moment, and just to help them cope and accept them and whatever they've chosen to do. So listen to their relational needs. So in every relationship, there are things that we need that help us to have healthy relationships. And when relationships have been seriously broken, people really need to experience healthy relationships around them to help them build back their sense of safety, their sense of self, their sense of being lovable, loved by God, lovable by others, and that they can love themselves. So they may have relational needs. We all do. We all have relational needs all the time, but listen for them under what they're saying. So sometimes they might give hints that I don't think anyone's going to accept me anymore, or no one's going to love me again. And that's letting you know that they need acceptance for whatever they've done, whoever they are. They need to know that you accept them and that you love them no matter what. And that's a really important thing. So however messy their lives are, you say, I love you, I accept you no matter what. That's how God accepts us. The Bible says, accept one another as Christ has accepted you. And that's a lot of acceptance. So we have a bit of a way to go. Then appreciation and gratitude. People need to be appreciated for what they do well. We need kindness and affection to help us feel loved. What kindnesses do they need? What kind of affection is appropriate? They might not be able to be hugged because of what they've experienced. That might be really difficult for them. So ask them, how is the best way I can show my care for you? What could I do for you that would be really kind? And ask them. Give them your focused attention, which we've spoken about during the listening time. Comfort, mourn with those who mourn. And this is huge, actually, because more I look at trauma and different responses to those who are sad, bereaved, struggling, abused, when we mourn with people who are mourning, there's something amazing about that. When we mourn alone, when we let people alone or stay away from them when they're mourning and hurting, it's really challenging. But when we comfort them, even when we comfort the stories from the past, so if someone tells you something about the past that was really painful, and you can comfort that story and say, I am so sorry you went through that. Oh, that should never have happened to you. I wish that I had been there, because if I had been there, I would have wanted to, give you a big hug or make you safe or tell you how much I loved you. And just mourning with the past story can really help someone who's hurting, because when we comfort the stories in the past or the stories in the present, when they think about them again, it's not just the horrible, prickly, sharp bits of that painful experience that they remember. They also remember that we cared. And whenever we care for someone, it's like we put cotton wool around all of those painful, scratchy bits and make it softer. So the next time they bump into that memory, it comes into their mind, they get triggered. There's also this comfort there. Oh, I remember what Karen said, and she said this, and she reminded me of God's comfort for me and her comfort for me, and she helped me to see the story in a different way. And that can be a large part of the healing, is actually letting people tell their sad stories or the sad effects of their stories, and we comfort them. So if someone does tell you a sad story and they want to tell you a sad story, be there to comfort them really well. Don't tell a sad story of your own, or don't say, oh, well, that's not that bad, get over it, or anything like that. Just focus on their sad story and just say, I am so sad that you went through that sad experience. I care. I am sad with you, so that you're not sad in that place all alone. Encouragement towards their goals. We can say encouraging things. They might need some more encouragement because they've just been so discouraged. They don't feel they can do anything anymore. So help them to find teeny weeny little goals. And whenever they have something they want to work towards, encourage them, support them, maybe go with them or do it together. And that can really help them. Ask how they want to be helped and supported. So always give them the opportunity to say how they would like it. You might say, would you like, sounds like you could do with some encouragement. What does that look like for you? Or how can I help you best? Or how can I help you to feel safe when you felt so unsafe? Let them know that they are really special to you. They are precious. They are precious to God. They are precious to you. So I am so glad that you are, that I know you. You've been a blessing to me. You are so precious to God. He created you. He loves you. I know it feels really hard right now, but he's with you all the time and he cares for you. So find ways to let them know that they are special and respond to the needs that underline their words, because they often won't say, oh, I need comfort, or oh, I need encouragement. They will express sadness, or they'll express discouragement, or they'll find it difficult to take the next step. So be aware of the body language they give you, the signals they give you, and be aware, what do they need the most? And this list on this screen can help you think about, maybe they need some to feel accepted, or maybe they need some extra kindness. Maybe they need some more positive attention or encouragement. So listen out for those things. These are all the things Paul tells us to do for one another in the New Testament. And when we do these for one another, we can help repair the brokenness that is in their life from living in this very fractured world. So important messages that can help to heal some of their thoughts. So if someone has been abused, you can say, what happened to you was wrong. Just say that. It was wrong. It was not your fault at all. You are not to blame and you did nothing wrong. You were a victim of someone else's bad choices and faults. You did your very best in really difficult circumstances. You were courageous. You made some good choices. I care about you and I'm so sorry you went through that experience, and God cares about you. He hurt so badly that this happened to you. God is with you always and he cries with you. And these can be some really important messages, because all of these are soothing messages. They're messages of love, messages of peace and calm and comfort. They help them to retell their story in a positive way rather than feeling it was all their fault, because that's often what people feel who have been through abuse or trauma or some other difficult things in their life. It's all my fault. If only I had done this. And they beat themselves up. And we can help them to see that they made some good choices. They're doing, look for the little things that they are doing well, and the little signs that they are surviving, coping, and point them out to them. You know, I saw you do this. That was amazing. That showed real courage. And I know how hard that was for you. We have this compassion cycle. So when we feel cared for, with those caring messages, it releases positive, happy, loving hormones into our brain and our body. And that makes us more able to listen to other people, to show empathy and be compassionate. That helps us to care for others, so that we help to release those hormones in their mind and bodies to help them feel cared for. And when we're in caring community, this is what we can be doing for each other. The more we care for each other, the easier it is for us to care for each other. And there is this sort of virtuous cycle that God has put into our lives, our bodies, our communities, that when we care for others, it comes back to us in care, and we help them to deal with their difficult traumas better. We help them to heal, and we help to create communities that are safer and more loving. And it's important to be aware of this. So however you respond to someone who's traumatized or hurting or depressed or bereaved or whatever they're going through, the more we show care for them and say things and do things that help them to feel cared for and not criticized or more hurt or put down, then we help them to process what's happening in their lives, to feel loved and cared for, to experience a channel of God's love into their life through us. And that helps to be part of the healing. So we might ask, what's the best thing I could do to help and support you right now? Pray, let them know that God cares if it's appropriate to pray with them, or just pray silently if that's more appropriate in the relationship. Continue to listen and be there when they need to talk. Sometimes I find people tell their story over and over again because no one has really heard it and comforted it. And when someone really listens and comforts their story, it can help them to tell a different story about themselves and to let go of it and to find healing again. So if they need some medical, legal, counseling support or something else, help them to find that, to get it, maybe go with them, help to protect them from further abuse or distress or trauma, can keep showing care and check in with them in warm and loving ways. So we're a consistent, warm, safe presence. And through our consistent, warm, safe presence, then they experience that God is a consistent, warm, safe presence in their life too. So as I mentioned before, I think listening to a person's story and comforting them is a biblical way that and a natural way for us to help heal the traumas and tragedies and disappointments of life around us. Jesus said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." Because if we don't show that we're sad, who will come along and comfort us? And Jesus says, when you do mourn, people will then comfort you, and you can be blessed by them, and they'll be blessed by you. I've been with people, and the only response to their story, their life, was to cry with them, not to say anything, just to sit and cry with them. And I can say those have been some of the most profound and moving times in my life. It felt like somehow we were on holy ground together just by sharing tears together. It was actually really exceptionally beautiful. The Message Bible says you're blessed when you feel you've lost what is most dear to you. Only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you. And God comforts us in all our troubles, says Paul, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves have received from God. For just as we share abundantly in the sufferings of Christ, so also our comfort abounds through Christ. And I love that God is the source of our comfort. And when we've been hurt in life, we can go to God for comfort. And we're often not such good comforters until we've actually experienced comfort from God for our own hurt and been healed and comforted by him. And then we understand more about what it feels like, what other people need to help them feel comforted. So God can be a real source of comfort in our lives to help us. When I'm working with people who are really distressed, we often make a comfort menu, and we write on it all the things that the person or the family would find comforting. And then we make it together. So what really comforts you? You know, when you're having a bad day, when you think about the things that have happened and you're feeling sad and hurt, what helps you to feel better? And it's often all kinds of things. I once asked my son what helped him to feel comforted, and he says, "Oh, it's when you make me a big mug of hot chocolate, and then you put squirted cream on the top, and then sprinkles, and then a chocolate stick, and then a chocolate cookie as well." So I didn't know that until I asked her. It's worth asking people, you know, when you've had a bad day or when life is difficult, what really comforts you? And it's not always tissues and tears. It can be, I just want to go out for a nice walk in the fresh air. I want to watch something funny on the telly, play a game with me and distract me, listen to my story and comfort it, make my favorite dinner, all sorts of different things. So when we make a comfort menu, we find out what the other person likes to help them feel better. It helps them to think about, oh yeah, when I feel bad, I could do that. That would really be helpful. And maybe we can help them do that too. So we can participate in those comfort experiences. So it can really be helpful for people to write down specifically the things that comfort them. With some people, I made a comfort basket when they've gone through a time of distress or that they're struggling, and find a basket and fill it with things that can comfort them. Inspirational short books that might be helpful, maybe some hand cream, their favorite drink like hot chocolate. I might write out a handwritten prayer and put it into the basket. Put some creative distraction in there. You know, it might be a fiddle toy, or it might be some coloring verse cards, depending on what the person would like. And I often print out the Father's love letter from the internet, which is a beautiful letter from God, using lots of Bible verses to create a letter of love to us. So I put things in there that I know the person will bring comfort to the person. So when I'm not around, they can just dip into it and pick something out and feel loved and comforted. It's often useful to ask people what's been most helpful so far, to give you a good starting place, because they might say, well, this was really not helpful. And you can say, well, okay, think to yourself, I remember not to do that then if that wasn't really helpful, because we're all different. What helps one person won't help another person. So ask who has been most helpful, what they found most comforting, what encouraged them the most. When they felt best, that's another thing to do. When do you feel strongest? When do you feel happiest? Ask them about those times and help them to see what was going on there and do more of what's helpful. There might be Christian counseling like Cornerstone. Their general practitioner might be able to help. Sometimes there are charities that are ready to help people who've been through various traumas and abuse or sadnesses of bereavement. There's some good books. Ask around for some good books. There's online support, webinars, and information, what do you call it? Like websites and things. And Joanna Daniel is an Adventist counselor in the UK, and she's put quite a lot of helpful things on her like LinkedIn pages and other social media pages. So go and look and see what she's written there. And she has different courses and journals and things that you can obtain and use to help you in your process. You can look for some SDA support networks. There's one based in the US. If you search for someone called Sarah McDougall, you'll find that she's an Adventist who has lots of webinars and resources to help people who have been through distress and abuse and trauma. Then we have the Adventist counselors here in the UK. And if you have some things that have really helped you, you could pop them in the chat so that we can share them with others. So think about what you found useful or what other people have found useful and put those ideas in there, because we're all different and we can always be learning from each other. We can offer spiritual support and help people to feel held in God's arms. Some people find this useful, not everybody. But when I am distressed myself, I just often imagine that God is giving me a big hug, and even give myself a big hug. Ooh, and imagine that I'm in God's lap and he's got his arms around me. And he's sometimes when I'm really distressed, I imagine that he holds me like a baby over his shoulder and he pats my back and goes, there, Karen, there. You just cry out. And I'll be sobbing into his shoulder. And then when I calm down, I pray, imagine, God, tell me what you most want to tell me right now. And I listen to what God wants to say to me. And maybe it will be a Bible verse. Maybe I'll hear him say, in my mind, something that's really helpful, that really comforts me. Because he is a source of all our comfort. And I find that whatever has happened in my life, I can sit in his lap. I've even imagined that I've pummeled his chest in my pain and frustration, and he just patiently holds me and calms me down and lets me know that I'm loved no matter what. And that has been a really big comfort in my life, so that I can be comforted by him, and I've then been better able to reach out and comfort other people too. So imagine you're sitting in God's lap and he's giving you a big hug, and he smiles at you and he holds you close and he tells you what he knows your broken and hurting heart most needs to hear. And what does he say to you? And maybe you can just pause, think about that conversation with God, just imagine it and then write it down and hold on to it. What would God say to comfort you? How would he tell you how much he loves you? And when we do those things, when we imagine ourselves being held by God and he's giving us a big hug and he's smiling at us and telling us things that really help us, all of that is activating the healthy, positive hormones in our brain, the oxytocin, the dopamine, those things that calm us and soothe us and help us to feel loved and happy. And so we can access that ourselves by choosing to focus on these different experiences that can help us in the distress. Be compassionate towards yourself. Learning self-compassion helps to soothe the brain, because it's this caring compassion cycle. When we say comforting things to ourselves, it can help to soothe the brain, help us to deal with things better. And we can encourage ourselves, be compassionate towards ourselves, because sometimes there's not anyone else there to do that for us. So when we can calm ourselves and take some deep breaths, tell us positive stories, be compassionate towards ourselves, we can really help our brains to be less anxious, to experience less stress and fear, and we can feel calmer, loved and soothed and happier. God is eternally compassionate towards us. And the more I've come to learn about God, the more I've come to learn about compassion, the more I realize just how incredibly compassionate God is. It's beyond my understanding, my imagination. And to me, eternity is about continually learning more facets of God's compassion for me and seeing more evidence of it. You can also think, what would you tell yourself? What would you tell a hurting friend who's in the same situation as you? So rather than talk to yourself, imagine you are a friend and say to them what you would say to show them compassion. Say those things to yourself, because if you say them to someone else, you can receive them too and say them to yourselves. You are precious, you are loved, you are cared for and valuable. And create safe boundaries, because you are precious enough to be protected, to be held safely. Another thing that can sometimes be useful for people is a project called 100 Things of Joy. And it's a healing project to help people who are feeling sad, depressed, anxious. They've been through difficult things in their life. And take a pack of 100 index cards or a notebook with 100 pages or something. The cards are really handy because you can shuffle them around. Write a different joy on every card or page. You might think, wow, how can I write 100 joys? Well, 10 things you like to see. You know, maybe a flower, maybe a friend's face, maybe a beautiful place that you remember and you have a photograph of. Maybe you can stick the photograph on the card. So write down 10 things you like to see, 10 things you like to hear, your favorite voices, people, songs, Bible stories, prayers, psalms, whatever. 10 things you like to taste. That can't be so hard. 10 things you like to smell, like baking bread and oranges and whatever else it is that you like to smell. Things you like to touch, activities that bring you joy, favorite books, films, songs, whatever. And when you realize you can write them in different categories, it's not so hard to find 100 things to write on the cards. And then you choose one card a day and experience that joy in some way. People who've been through trauma, deep grief, sadness, anxiety, depression, abuse, often don't engage with joy. And so they become disengaged from joy, and the less joy they experience, the less they feel happy. So by writing 100 things of joy and intentionally experiencing an experience of joy every single day, maybe more than one. Imagine they're like happy tablets, happy pills, but not, instead of taking a tablet, of course, if you are taking tablets, continue to do that. They can be very useful. But these things can be a natural way to experience positive things in your life. So keep taking the other tablets that have been prescribed, but also do these things that are experiencing joy intentionally. And maybe you have a friend who really struggles to experience joy. So maybe they can choose a card and you can help them to experience it. You do it with them, and that can give them the motivation. They can just choose one card a day to begin with, and maybe build up to 3 or 4 or maybe 5 and experience the joys. Choose those, because many things that make us happier are actually really small little things. We have small moments of joy in our life, and we can experience those in different ways. So then you can maybe write about what you did on the back of the card and the date, so you know when it happened, and you can go back and remember those times. So this is a way to help people re-engage with joy. It's also quite helpful to encourage people to engage with positive emotions. And I've written a project called Flourish, which is on the TD website. And you can go there, and there are now about 17 posters, and each poster has 10 ideas. Most of them have 10 ideas of how you can experience joy, gratitude, amusement, wonder, serenity, hope, these things that help put positive emotions back into our heart. I like to think of these positive emotions as being the emotions of heaven that God has given us to help us through the less wonderful emotions of living on earth. So every time we experience joy, gratitude, laughter, inspiration, hope, these are what we were created to experience all the time. And these ideas on these little posters can help you to re-engage with those things. There's also posters on that page about what to do when someone's been traumatized, feeling sad, you've had a bad day, how to listen well. So there's posters of other things that can help you to help people. Sometimes I've just printed off a set of these for someone, maybe given them one at a time and said, let's go and do this on here, or give them some things with a poster that help them to do the things on the poster that are mostly quite simple. But if you need some extra ideas, you can go to these pages, download these, and learn more about them. I've actually made a video of each one of those posters that is on an ADRA website. So it's half an hour on each of these different topics that go into it a bit deeper and help you to experience these positive emotions. In 2 Corinthians 10:5, it says, we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. And this can be helpful for someone who's gone through a difficult time. You take a pad of small paper notes like you get in a note block, little square ones perhaps. And on each page, you write a negative message that comes into their mind. So when people have been hurt or traumatized or had different negative experiences, there's often things that pop into their mind that said, oh, you're no good, you can't do that, don't be so stupid. These negative messages that we often have them in our heads anyway, little ones that pop in there from time to time. We've all had those. But if you write them on pieces of paper and look at them and think, whoa, those are lies about me. Let's take these thoughts captive and make them obedient to Christ. So we can look at them and say, these are actually untrue. This is not what God says about me. This is not what I know about myself from God's perspective. So these thoughts are lies about me. They are not true. They're hurting me. They're not God's thoughts about me. And you can put them in an old box and destroy them or burn them and get rid of them and just say, those don't belong to me. But it's really helpful to have got them out of your head and written them down and acknowledged, this is not a good thought. It doesn't help me. It tears me down. It doesn't build me up. I'm going to throw it aside. I'm going to sift my thoughts. So destroy those and then think about your good thoughts. What are the good thoughts that come into your mind? That might be really hard at the beginning, but think about beautiful thoughts that come into your mind. Think about how true they are. Think about Bible verses that help you or lovely things people have said about you. And then when one of those disobedient thought pops into your mind, one that's not true, one that's hurting you, you can say, I know where that belongs. That one belongs in the bin, and you can sort of take it out, put it in the bin, and choose a lovely thought from the beautiful box of positive thoughts. And this can be really helpful. You can just make a list of positive thoughts, think on them, memorize the Bible verses that help you, maybe write some of the nice thoughts about yourself in little posters and put them around the place or on sticky notes, just to keep reminding you to think the positive thoughts. Think about you the way God thinks about you. Whatever things are lovely, think about these things and ditch those negative thoughts that tear you up, that are not from God, that are lies about you. So when those thoughts come into your head, take them out, imagine you're throwing them in the bin, and choose a beautiful thought to replace it. A gratitude list is really helpful, and we hear lots about gratitude as being beneficial. The brain can't be grateful and anxious at the same time, so it's really helpful to focus on what you're thankful for. One psychologist I read said we should list 30 things we're thankful for before we get out of bed in the morning, because that will restart our brain in a positive way. But even just writing 3 things a day in a simple diary, or taking pictures of 3 things you're grateful for if you don't like to write, or going through the alphabet and thinking of something you're thankful for, beginning with each letter, can really be helpful to help reset and heal the brain, to give it a break from the anxiety, to help it notice what is good around you. Moments of wonder are also really helpful too, to go outside, really look at the things that God has made, the details in a daisy or on the bark of a tree, or how a snail moves. Being filled with wonder at these little things is also really good for our well-being. So go and focus on those things. During the pandemic, I would go for a walk with my phone and I would take pictures of things that filled me with wonder. And I just did it because I like to take pictures. But after a while, I realized it was really helping me, because when I went out for the walk, I didn't think any anxious thoughts. I was just continually looking around me for what was beautiful. And that really helped me to balance my own feelings. What went well is another useful task. Use a small diary or index cards to note down at least 3 things that went well in the day before you go to bed. This is really helpful because when we think about what went well in the day, we have a good feeling rather than rehearsing all the bad things. If we rehearse a few good things that went well, then our brains are in a better place to sleep, to process the day in a more refreshing and healthy way. So it's really important to focus on what went well rather than list your catastrophes. Do you know what? Most of the time, I think 95% of the time, if not more, we're all doing really, really good stuff. And we just take it for granted. And we don't realize how good that stuff is. And then we make one small mistake and it catastrophizes the whole day. So let's get these things in proportion. You are doing really good stuff almost all the time. And occasionally we're human and we make a mistake. That's okay. Look at what went well. And the other things are just learning experiences. So 3 things that went well. One thing I learned today was, because we learn from the things that don't go as we planned. And one thing that surprised me was, or one thing that filled me with wonder was, and where I saw God today. Where did you see God today in your life? Because when we're wondering about that every day, where is God at work? What is he doing? That really is a positive thought that helps us to find God in surprising places. So sometimes having time with your friend is all the therapy you need. So keep being there for them, praying, loving, listening, being joyful, comforting their tears, soothing their fears, and caring for them. Because they say that a large proportion of the counseling, what does good in counseling, is the relationship with another human being who cares for you. And so make the most of that. Realize that you being there, loving them, praying for them, listening to them, sharing moments of joy, whatever it takes, you are being a really important gift into their life. And be an advocate, because those who have experienced abuse are often helped by someone who can speak up for them, speak on their behalf, so they don't have to tell their story over and over again. Someone else is standing up and speaking out to make the world a safer place. And we need to be, as Christians, people who love mercy, do justly, and walk humbly with a compassionate God who cares for the suffering that's everywhere in this universe, especially for his beloved children. And how can we be people who love mercy, do justly, and walk humbly in this broken world with people who need the greatest compassion? So there are some places you can go if you want to learn more. The Adventist Learning Community has a course, a free course on sexual abuse, reclaiming hope, for those who want to understand it and help others find hope. There's also lots of materials at enditnow.org to help you support people who've been abused and hurt. There's lots there. And if all of our churches were doing this regularly, we'd have a lot more people who understood what is happening, how people are hurting, and how we can help and protect them in our churches. I'm going to show a song in a minute on YouTube, and we're going to pause the video. We're going to end the video before I show the song. So I'm just going to pause now and pray, and then we're going to listen to a song by Lauren Daigle called You Say, which is helping us to fill our minds with just what God sees in us and what he says about us, because he says the most beautiful healing things. And then after that, we will stop the video. We'll have a discussion time, and you can share what helps you, and we can ask some questions as well. So let's pray. Father God, I just want to thank you that your heart is so enormous and so full of compassion for every single person. Every tear that falls, you notice. Every heart that breaks, you feel the pain. And you want to reach out and mend all this brokenness, and you will one day. In the meantime, may we come to you for our own healing and be people that can heal one another and create caring, compassionate communities. So whatever anyone is needing right here now on this Zoom, we pray that they may experience your loving care experienced some healing from having been here today, or know how to help someone else in some small way around them to find your love and peace in this broken world. In Jesus' name, amen. So now we'll end the recording.